War and Peace is pretty entertaining though. Like that's like reading a soap opera. That thing is good. I actually read War and Peace on the train one summer working as like a marketing slave, and it was on the train, and it was like terrible. Norwegian trains are terrible. They did like the whole New Public neoliberal splitting it up into a bunch of different companies, and they don't talk to each other, and they're always delayed, and it's a nightmare. So I had like 3 hours on the train every day, and there was plenty of time to read War and Peace. But I think that too, it's like I love literature. Literature is great, and like good books are amazing. And I have friends who say like, "Oh, I should read more books," and I'm like, you shouldn't read more books unless you like reading books. I love reading books, and that's why I read a bunch of books. But I feel like a lot of people think about it as like this virtuous thing that you like should do. But I'm like, if you don't like it, like you should do something else. You know, it's uh yeah. I don't know. I love art and movies, and that's how I entertain myself. But I think if someone else entertained themselves in like a different way, I feel like that's no worse. And also bear in mind, like skiing is pretty privileged. Like you run into a lot of people with a lot of like, you know, education, and they come from families where people are exposed to a bunch of stuff that most people aren't. So, I mean, my parents are both doctors who like, yeah, I grew up on reading New York Review books and Scientific American, and these like there were just like publications laying around that you weren't like forced to read it, but it was just there and you consumed it kind of. Yeah.
On this side note, I saw an Instagram story that you put up, and you were recommending a book, and then in brackets you said not like the other, it's a French economist book. I was wondering, which book was that? Was that Thomas Piketty's Capital?
Yes, that was the Capital. I like his other one better though, the Cap. So for anyone who doesn't know Piketty or isn't exposed to this, I feel like people are getting more attuned with the whole inequality thing. I think Trump won now because of people being like, okay, the current state of things aren't working. We were doing pretty bad. Like, and this is like a thing, like since the 80s, essentially, um, the majority have been worse off at the expense of the rich. Like the super rich have been taking a larger chunk of the pie every year since the 80s, while the economy has been slowing down. So like since the Second World War, 50s, 60s, and up to the 70s, the Western economies were like booming, crazy growth rates, 4-5% every year, while most people were getting better off. And this happened because of like how we did taxation and a bunch of stuff. And they were like, what's interesting is that, you know, people described this back in the day. Like the communists had like these theories, like, you know, Marx and all these people. When you read Marx, you're like, oh yeah, this guy was full of shit. He didn't actually describe the world. Like he didn't have any data. But what's cool about Piketty, French economist, came out with Capital in the 21st Century in 2013. I think it came out. And he's like one of the first guys to actually find good data on this subject. And so basically he poured over tax records, and I mean, in the France and the UK, it goes back to like the 1700s, whereas the rest of the world is like newer. But he actually finds data, or like he actually looks at the world and it's like, okay, this is what we're actually seeing. And what you're seeing is that me and you, I don't know what your family's like, but like middle class families like mine all over the world are being like actively screwed over by the rich every year. And it's getting worse. And it's been getting worse since the 80s. We're not fixing it. And yeah, it is interesting. It's kind of like those climate scientists yelling at like, hey, our world is burning. And then people are slowly catching on to it. I feel like the inequality thing is kind of like that.
Because I saw that and I was like, oh, I wonder if he's talking about Piketty.
And where did you read it?
Yeah. Well, I say I read it. My eyes went through the words, and about 10% of it went into my brain.
Yeah.
But when it came out in 2013, the leader of the British Labour Party at the time was a guy called Ed Miliband. And obviously, it was a very prominent book when it came out. And it was a lot of it in the press and in the news. And Ed Miliband was asked if he had read it as the leading voice of the centre-left of Britain. And he said that he could only manage about 5 chapters and then got bored of that.
But that's the problem with fucking Piketty. He's so boring. Like, you listen to him on a podcast, he has this like monotonous French accent, and it's just like you can't listen to the guy for more than 3 seconds. And it's kind of shitty because it's like his findings are super interesting. And essentially, it's the fact that if you own capital, capital grows faster than wages. Unless you tax capital, people earning wages are screwed, while the people owning the capital are earning more and more. Like in the UK right now, you see people like generations are not. I don't know if you observe this, but like kids are not able to afford their homes that their parents were able to afford. Oh, lots of stuff. So it's kind of terrible, and it's a shame because his findings are so important and fascinating, but it's such a shame that it's so bad at conveying them. You know?
He needs to
So
stop that to write it.
he needs, yeah, it is like he should be a ghostwriter for like some influencer who like actually has charisma. So that's kind of terrible. His second book is actually super interesting, Capital and Ideology, where he basically goes through the history of economic regimes in the world, like from way back. And the fascinating thing, and I think this is what like most people don't think about. It's so easy to be like accept the dogmas of our time as truth, whereas like every society at any point, whether it was like a slave holding society in Haiti or the Egyptians or the Romans or medieval France, every society thought they were a just society. Every society had stories and reasons for the way things were. Today our story is that we need billionaires and we need people to be able to become billionaires because otherwise people won't have an incentive to work, and that we're rewarding hard work, which is like totally not true at all. Like you can look at that through a bunch of lenses, and it's just been debunked so many times. But this is the prevailing, narrative, that we're meritocracies. Uh but it's like, and we think, oh, that's okay, we're just. But then you look at all these other societies and they had their own stories, and you realize, wow, our story is also just a story, and we can be way more imaginative with how we structure our societies and how we yeah, I don't know, how we have good lives. you know we don't have to believe the dogmas of our time or like the stories of our time. We can actually try to, yeah, come up with things that are maybe better.
On a sociological